Good morning. Thanks so much for being here, and many thanks to Craig and the UNI College of Business for organizing this forum to help us better understand our energy situation, the situation we're in. So I want to quickly, won't take too much time, I want us to get to the discussions that we're going to have with speakers after me. So I briefly want to share with you that my task is to provide a context for our conversations. So I thought of a few insights or aspects of this energy situation we're in for your consideration. So one, when discussing the future of energy for, or what our nation's energy policy ought to be, the issue is almost always framed in terms of supply. Where can we get more of this, right? You almost never hear why we're using so much. We're not asking ourselves why we're using so much. We rarely talk about significant reduction in demand as a local and national goal. We just don't talk about it. I think the last person I remember talked about it was President Carter. And that didn't seem like worked well. So there's something, but it's an aspect we need to deal with. That's just a reality. As Vice President Cheney stated, the American way of life is non-negotiable. So our pattern of life and economy waste lots of energy the way things are. Lights left on, lots of unnecessary trips, extreme material consumption, and poor city planning even more waste more energy. The American way of life, as is a big dog, and you got to feed a big dog, right? So that's kind of it's kind of like 10 below. All the windows are open. And we're just wondering, oh my God, why can't this furnace keep up? We must need more furnace, a bigger furnace. So that's just our situation, just our confusion over energy. Barbara Kingsolver describes this fossil fuel frenzy to feed the big dog of our time very well, where extravagant excesses of one culture wash up as famine or flood on the shores of another. Kingsolver recalls Jules Verne's novel Around the World in 80 Days, where on the day 79, the hero of the novel is stranded in the mid-Atlantic on a steamboat that has run out of coal. The decision is to pull up the decks and throw them into the boiler. Quote, on the next day, the masts, rafts, and spars were burned. The crew worked lustily, keeping up the fires. There was a perfect rage for demolition. So, this perfect rage for demolition, what does it look like in our in this fossil fuel frenzy? Well, blowing up mountains to remove coal, blowing up the bedrocks of our nation to extract oil and natural gas with fracking, destroying the Gulf of Mexico ecosystem to extract oil, blowing up the whole town to transport oil, and we now, in Iowa, we're seeing sand mines near Dubuque, all the way Decorah, southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois. We're gobbling things up. The perfect rage for demolition continues. So we happen to be alive on our watch at a time of extreme energy extraction, the energy frenzy, a perfect rage for demolition. All of them invariably require beating up on other people and places near or far. So here's another insight. We all have heard and should understand the expression, freedom isn't free, right? Everybody, freedom isn't free. We as educated citizens should also know that cheap energy isn't cheap. And cheap food isn't cheap. Economist Robert Costanza says, what we have had in the past is a market that really hasn't been telling us the truth about the costs of our activities. So what we want to do is make the market tell the truth. I really like that, and I know Dave Swenson, there are other economists here who really are trying to work hard so that the market is telling the truth in our analysis. One huge cost, and really the biggest challenge of our time, is that for the past 30 years, atmospheric scientists have been telling us that the burning of fossil energy is acidifying the oceans. It's disrupting the stability of the climate that supports human economy and all life. Do we really want to keep going on this path? That's a question we need to think about. British economist E.F. Schumacher said, any intelligent fool can make things bigger, more complex, and more violent. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. The opposite direction, in our case, might mean significantly reducing our demand for fossil energy, divesting from fossil energy, and investing in renewable energy. The opposite direction, energy-wise, might mean quit deficit spending of our ecological capital, as Wes Jackson refers to it, deficit spending of our ecological capital, and really begin living within our means, which really means living on the solar income. And that's something, in financial terms, I tell my students, living on credit versus living within our means. And energy-wise, the only living within our means that I know is living on the solar income. That's a huge challenge, but we gotta do it. And so in other words, how do we get from here to there without burning up the ship? How do we do that? And that's, to me, the biggest, that's the most important question of our time. It takes courage, and as a nation, we have done courageous things before. I think this is really important to remind ourselves and our students that we've done courageous things before. Many people before us did things that seemed impossible and intractable, but we did them. And the last thing I want to say is that this isn't just about energy. This issue is not, well, we're just going to switch from fossil to renewables. I don't think this is just about energy. It's really about how the land is treated. It's about how we live. It's how we organize our daily lives. It's about the whole thing. And how seriously we act on our duty to the rest of creation. So through science and through our moral development, we know that we have an obligation to protect the capacity of the biosphere to support life. That's just what we got to do. We need cultural and policy solutions that help us do that. And I really hope today's conversations will help us think through this. Thanks for listening.